My name is Jessie DeBose. Today I will be presenting an oral case study on the networking career of Heidi Roizen. I'm going to talk about the strengths of her network across her career, as well as how principles from selected readings apply to the power, influence, and network success she was able to see. The case study from the Harvard School of Business identifies two stages in Ms. Roizen's career. One where she is building a network, and a second where she is maintaining and leveraging that network. There are certain strengths that identify with those stages, as well as can be seen across her entire career. The first is access. She speaks of this with her first position at Tandem, where she has access to the CEO, and that allows her to build a relationship and ultimately a network connection with that person. She continues to seek out access at her other positions. At Teammaker, she joins well-known technology groups, and at Apple, she has access to worldwide relationships. She still has the strength of access later in her career, but it shifts from her seeking out connections to those connections seeking out her, and her being able to be more strategic about those connections. Another strength is that she avoided network inbreeding. The best highlight of this is the dinner party she threw, where the guest list was intentionally created based on existing networking ties of those guests. Ms. Roizen was also considered relatable, approachable, likable, and a dependable networker. She was consistent. She valued consistency and spoke of it many times in the case study. There were two different ways she was consistent in her career. First is typical of an early career, where she was consistently a worker bee that produced results and could be depended on by her superiors. She then shifted when she was at Apple to being a consistent networker and being able to be depended on for her ability to successfully network. All of these led to her being able to be productively generous, which is one of the terms that Adam Grant speaks of in his LinkedIn article. She was able to say no, and she was able to do that, which really strengthened the maintenance of her network rather than causing it to contract or to plateau. She also intentionally built a broad and diverse network. She was not just networked into one cluster, but was able to have network connections across many fields. And all of this led to her being a super connector and a broker, which is the greatest strength of any network. These strengths seen across her career directly relate to some of the concepts in the selected readings. That ability to avoid network inbreeding is really the shared activities principle seen in the Uzi and Dunlap reading. She created ties between influencers by changing their usual pattern of behavior and interaction and giving them a platform on which to interact. This increased her influence and helped her maintain a successful network structure. The principles of liking and reciprocity from the Cialdini article were seen in her other strengths. She was able to increase her influence by simply being likable. She was able to increase her power by the principle of reciprocity. She could be depended on to produce results from her network. Being considered consistent is also one of the principles from the Cialdini reading. The principle of consistency, this was crucial to her maintaining a long, successful, and stable network throughout her career. The principle of scarcity applies to that ability to say no. This really increased her power of her network. She was really very intentional about using unique benefits and exclusive information, as well as key persons in her network, being disciplined to only reach out to certain key persons a specific number of times, which made those interactions when she did reach out to them very powerful. She was also able to create a highly diverse network with highly diverse network ties, as is referenced in the Uzi and Dunlap article. This increased her influence across a broad range of people. And of course, as a super connector and a broker, she was able to emphasize those hallmarks in a network of power, influence, and success. What is interesting is when you analyze Ms. Roizen's network in terms of the principles presented in Adam Grant's book. She is clearly a matcher, and this is apparent in statements from both herself and colleagues throughout the case study. However, what's interesting to me is that early in her career, she seems to be more of a matcher taker. You can see this when she speaks of her fiance and not wanting to be dependent on the fate of others. She speaks directly about taking opportunities with the access that she has early in her career. She seems to form connections because they may be of value later, saying you never know where someone will turn up next. She also intentionally kisses up. You can see that in those dinner parties and in her interactions at her kids' school. And yet there is little discussion of input from subordinates. This is one of the other themes that Adam Grant highlights with takers. She's a center of attention, even being called notoriously well known by a colleague, which is another mark of a taker, and contrasts the giver examples of Lincoln and of Rifkin that we see in Adam Grant's book. However, later in her career, her giver tendencies become stronger, and she seems to be nudged in those giving directions. This relates to the identity shift and reciprocity reversals that Adam Grant references. She even says so much as even though she is a venture capitalist, she would much rather work with existing projects and give to those. As Adam Grant says, if takers are acting in ways that benefit others, regardless of motives, they are making contributions that sustain giving as a form of exchange. This transition from giver to taker is crucial to Miss Rifkin in being able to successfully maintain and leverage that network later in her career, and really highlights some of the concepts that Adam Grant speaks of in his book. Thank you for listening to my oral case study. The articles that I referenced are listed here on the screen.